Hi, everybody at Salisbury University. Thank you for inviting me to be part of this. David, I think this is a great idea. I'm really honored to be a part of your library here. My name is John Wools, and I teach ceramics at Jacksonville State University in Jacksonville, Alabama. And I'm going to show you how I make this type of cup that I've been making for quite a few years now. And some of the techniques, and we'll talk about some ideas and the design thinking that goes into this piece. I have a couple of older pieces of mine, so you can really see the difference between the work that I used to make and the work that I've been kind of making, in the recent years. These were all sort of altered versions of the T-bowl kind of format. And I liked making these a good bit. They're sort of very loose and gestural. This one's wood-fired. But they often existed as a sculptural object. These objects, they weren't really used an awful lot for drinking. They mostly sat on a mantle somewhere. So I decided a couple of years ago that I wanted to design a pot that would still have my own aesthetic and my own design sensibility, but would be more geared towards everyday use. And by doing that, as some of the functional objects kind of became more in line with the utility side of things, the sculptural objects had the freedom to become more sculptural, and that idea of function wasn't really necessarily an important part of the conversation anymore. So in some ways it was really great because it freed up both bodies of work to develop very naturally on their own. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you how I make this pot right here. And this is the bisque piece I'm going to send you. So I work in porcelain and high fire cone tin porcelain. And yeah, I'll show you about that. I'm going to adjust my camera here so you can see what I'm doing. I usually throw standing up, so this actually is very natural, but also it helps to be able to step back and see your pot as you're working on it. When looking down on a piece, it's really easy to get a false sense of volume. Things tend to look really wide, and when you step back, you realize that they're just like a slightly pregnant cylinder. So I'll step back from this piece from time to time and check it out. This is about 2 pounds of clay. And I like to use this rib here to compress the bottom. It gives it a really nice curved interior profile instead of that 90-degree angle profile that I'll get, with a regular wooden rib. And it also helps to compress that bottom to avoid S-cracks. Sit on it for a minute. So it's important at this stage for me to get the approximate volume of the piece, and I don't want the walls to go too thin because I'm going to stretch them out afterwards. So if they start off really thin, I can get some structural issues when I go to inflate it, and I'll show you that in a minute. This is my favorite tool for doing this wet chattering technique that I've been using for a few years now. You can do it with a metal rib, probably any number of other things, but I like this paint scraper because it's nice and flexible. It's got a sharp edge. I usually lose one of these, at least one of these a year at airport security when I go to do workshops. So now I keep my favorite one at home and I just buy them wherever I get to. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hold this. I'm not going to hold it perpendicular. I'm going to hold it at, what's that, maybe a 45-degree angle. And put a little bit of pressure with my inside hand. What's going to happen, it's taking that moisture off the surface, it's compressing that wall, straightening it, and drying it out. And you can hear it. I don't know if you can hear it on your end, but you can hear it start to chatter. And you just have to be patient and just kind of sit on it. So you feel the vibration in your hand. And you can really hear the wet chattering of this tool. So then when I stop, I've got these really natural patterned lines from this tool just kind of jumping and chattering that surface. And depending on how long you do it for, how long you hold it, you can get anything from really fine, delicate lines to much more dramatic marks. So now what I want to do is I want to inflate this form. And I want to give it a really strong sense of volume, like it's taking a deep breath, or like it's a balloon that's about to pop, or maybe a tomato on a windowsill that's just ripe and is just about to split apart. But I can't touch the outside now because I don't want to ruin that textured surface. So I'm going to wet my hands and I'm going to support where the foot's going to be from underneath, and with my fingertips I'm going to start to inflate it. And I find this to be a very satisfying way to make pots. You can really do this with any kind of surface you put on a cylinder. You can go back in and inflate it, and it's really going to record the tension that happens when a vertical or horizontal line or any kind of textured mark is then expanded from the inside. And the wall of that pot really becomes a lot more like a skin, or like a membrane stretched over that interior space, that interior volume. Clean up that lip. Kind of articulate that foot just a little bit. Slice it off. Adjust that a little. And then you'll see this is the pot. And you can see that texture, how that's been stretched. So when I'm finishing this, I've made some versions of this with kind of a traditional trimmed foot ring, which I like. This one was soda fired, and I like that, but to me this is a very much, this is like a go-to. It's kind of what you'd expect from turning this pot over. So I started to trim these feet really, really clean, down to a small pointed foot without much of a ridge there, to kind of give it this sense of blossoming or growing out of the ground or out of the surface of the tabletop. And what I like to do is I'll wax all of this and I'll leave it unglazed. And then when it comes out of the kiln, I'll polish it with diamond pads. I'll put it on a Giffen grip and I'll use diamond pads and I'll start at a 50 grit and I'll polish it all the way up to about 3000. And because it's porcelain, it just glows. It almost looks like it's glazed. It becomes this really, pale white, semi-glossy surface. And that's a really nice, cool, subtle contrast to the glazes. And I use a clear on the inside and a semi-matte clear on the outside. I fire them in a reduction kiln, so they tend to be that pale blue. They actually sell it on base glazes without any iron. So the color, that pale bluish white color, is a result of the trace amounts of iron in the glaze being reduced in the gas kiln. So I've also used this on some other pieces. This is a wood-fired tumbler, a little more gestural, but you can see how, those ridges have this really nice texture, this, writing a history onto a surface. And then in this particular one, I put thick slip over it. And it's just, to me, it's really cool how the natural ash from this wood kiln breaks over these pieces. I've used it also in some of these sculptural cup forms. And with this body of work is the sort of these sculptural cup forms that are being developed in parallel to these more functional forms. And I'm using those same techniques to alter the surface and to almost put down a background for some interesting glaze interaction and textural interaction on those pots too. So I'm going to send you the bisque version of this, and I've got a kiln firing right now. If any of them come out and they're pretty good, I might send one of those too. So thank you again for the invite. I am happy to take any questions. You can email me at joles@jsu.edu, or I think I'm at John_Oles on Instagram. So good luck, be safe, make good stuff.